Oh, this one should be interesting. Today we're watching the River Ganga by the Ministry of Information Films Division. And what makes this interesting, you know what, I guess I won't spoil the surprise. I'll just say we're watching the River Ganga by the Ministry of Information. Publication date 1961. That sound effect, man. I hope you all know where we are already, because that sound effect, there's one place in my brain that sound effect is attached to, and I think we're going there. I mean, I guess if you know where the Ganges River is, you already know that. Before we get started, I guess I gotta ruin the surprise. So this is not made by any American media production company. This was made by, what was it? The Ministry of Information. And that doesn't sound like an American name because it's not. That's an Indian name, the Indian Ministry of Information. This was made by an Indian production company rather than an English-speaking or American. Well, I guess they probably did speak English. This rather than an American production company, which is what most of what we've watched so far, or British. This is Indian, and already I'm digging the music a lot more. This is going to be really interesting. I'm curious how this differs from how an American would make a program on the River Ganges, right? So usually we have the American perspective played out at large on these programs. But now it's a little different because this was made by the Indian Ministry of Information. So this is not coming from the perspective of the West at all, really. All this is genuine Indian thoughts and understanding of the River Ganga. Even the music, right? I feel like that intro music would now be considered a little cliche or tasteless, or maybe people would even say a little racist to start a program about India so suddenly with such a sitar or whatever it is, with such an Indian sound. But this was made by the Indian Ministry of Information, so you can't really accuse them of, stereotyping Indian music if they're the ones making it in the first place. So this should come from a very interesting point of view, I think, and I'm excited for it. Okay, so this is interesting. Producer in charge is Ezra Mir, and the script and compilation is Gopal Dutt. All right, so the sound was some guy, S.D. Patil, but then music is, this guy's literal name is just VJ. There's no last name, it's just VJ. It's so interesting because usually in these sorts of programs, again, they all come from America more or less, or Britain, but the names are always American names and everything. So it's so interesting to see something equally as old, but all of the names and all of the letters are Indianish. Or, well, the letters are Latin, but whatever. But the names are Indian, like Jagdish Raja for the voice. That you're only going to find that name in India. So I just always find it interesting seeing the names of people who contributed to these programs. But the music is so good. It's so lively. I'm enjoying it already. Before they even start talking, let's look at this map of India real quick. So we have Rajasthan, we have Madhya Pradesh, which I feel like has a different name now. Maybe it doesn't. Oh, there's Uttar Pradesh. So there's Delhi. They don't have New Delhi. I don't know if New Delhi was around at this time yet or not, but that's funny. And then we have Allahabad, which... that's also changed its name. This city, Allahabad, was mentioned in Around the World in 80 Days. That's the only reason I know that. There's Assam, there's Bhutan. It's just so funny. There's Jammu and Kashmir all the way up here too. It's just an interesting map. I feel like if there are any Indian viewers watching, they will have a fun time looking at this map. Or maybe they'll really hate it because of the Jammu Kashmir stuff. It seems like they included that with India, so I think my Indian viewers are happy so far.
The Great Plain of northern India is a gift of the River Ganga. The plain owes its rich...
Hang on, before we even keep going, I know this river as the Ganges River. I guess back then it was called the Ganga River, though. Again, that's a difference that you don't really even know existed until you go back and watch this stuff. I didn't know that the Ganges River used to have a slightly different name. It's funny. It's such a unimportant detail that I never knew also, Do Indian people call it the Ganga? I guess it's probably their language, so they probably have a real name for it in their language. But is it the Ganges or Ganga to Indian people? Like, what do people in India call it today? Is Ganga still the right word, or is it Ganges? I don't know.
Richness, fertility, industrial and economic development, mostly to this mighty river. On her banks has grown a civilization we are proud of.
Well, this city of Hardwar, that's funny. It's so funny about the voice of this narrator, too, because obviously he's Indian, but he also has this, like, Britishness to it. And, like, the way he speaks, like, I don't even think Indian people speak like this anymore. Like, you can tell he has learned all his English through, like, the most proper English gentleman ever. And, like, it's such a preserved way of speaking that I think doesn't exist anymore. Still, like that again, that's so much the value of these old programs is just hearing like how old, colonial Indian people spoke back in the day. It's just interesting.
The holy river rises in the snow-capped Himalayas.
That was also funny how he said Himalayas. Himalayas. That's and theoretically this is all more accurate than our names today, right? Like we've since called them the Himalayas, but it's just funny to hear a guy who's actually from near the Himalayas pronounce them in his own way, right? The Himalayas. Like, how do they say it in India? Did they say it? It's probably something completely different in Indian or in Hindi, but I'm just curious. Do Indian people still say the Himalayas or do they say the Himalayas? I'm curious.
Amid the mighty mountains lies a frozen river of ice, the Gangotri Glacier.
This is also already like very interesting to see this part of India, right? I feel like most people, when they think of India, they think of like the hottest place on earth and just like, palm trees or, banana trees or whatever they got over there, like trees, jungle, forest, elephants, those sorts of things. Nobody is picturing like cold, snow-capped peaks in India, even though, they have the tallest mountains in the world over there. That's not really what people imagine India like. But it's interesting to see that even the Indian people appreciate this is where their river gets their start.
At the glacier's end is a little cave called the Gomukh or Cow's Mouth. Here emerges a small stream. This is the beginning of the mighty Ganga. On her way down the mountains, she leaps over a granite cliff, her waters casting a shimmering veil over the stern face of the rock. Joined by other tumblers.
I gotta say it again, but the music is such a funny choice. It's like, it's whatever, rhythmic chanting is common throughout India, but it's just like this, you would never find this sort of music in like American productions, which, sounds obvious to say, but it's a different artistic choice than what other American artists would choose. Indian artists have their own inbuilt artistic vision, and part of that is the music that they include just over the narration. Again, like part of the reason why it's so funny is because in film editing or in video editing, you almost never want to put somebody's voice in a song beneath somebody's voice who's speaking for narration, right? You can't have two people speaking, one song, one actually speaking. You can't put them over each other, but because Indian music was so vocally driven, I guess it would be hard not to do that in this sort of program. So it's just another interesting aspect of what makes this more culturally Indian than, say, American or Western.
Turbulent streams, also born in the snowy heights. The Ganga is here called the Bhagirathi. After the...
Like if you watch and you listen, it kind of sounds distracting to have all these vocals. I'm just saying it's not the best idea to put vocal music underneath vocal performances anyway.
The legendary king Bhagirath, who brought the waters off the river.
Just look at this bridge. Like this is really why I want to watch this. I want to see what India in 1960 looked like, right? 1961 this was made. So this is like a bridge in India in 1960. This part of the world feels still so foreign and distant to me. Like this is a part of the world that like, I don't know, bridges look like this for,
River down from heaven to earth.
That bridge reminds me a lot of the bridge from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Oh, this bridge too.
In her mountainous course, the Ganga has many tributaries, like the Jahnavi, and the most important of them all, the Alaknanda. The Alaknanda meets the Bhagirathi at Devaprayag, and the two merge to form.
Dang, okay, so this is an Indian village from 1960. I just want to take a little time to look at it. See, it looks so quaint and organized. I feel like, and this isn't about India specifically, but I feel like if you went to a village today, it would look like so trashed, right? Like there would be plastic everywhere. But back then, like they don't have any plastic back then, right? Like this Indian village is like so like clean and preserved. It might not be clean, but it's definitely like nicer than villages are just nowadays. And it's so cool to see what villages like this used to look like. Because again, I guarantee you now, this river is like covered in, absolute just human garbage. Again, that's not really a statement on India, more so than it is about like the state of pollution in the world today. Like you could have villages that aren't polluted back in the day, but now because the cheapest things are all plastic, you get all this plastic coming to these villages and you don't get clean, serene, pure villages like this anymore. At least that's my perception. Maybe there's villages like this in India everywhere, but I like seeing villages preserved before the influx of cheap plastic consumer goods.
Meets the Bhagirathi at Devaprayag, and the two merge to form the Ganga. Devaprayag is one of the holiest.
Because, look even at these buildings. These buildings look like there's a building code or something enforced. Like, they're so square and regular. Like, I was expecting, like hovels and huts made out of, like, straw. But it's actually, it's impressive architecture.
Of confluences. Pilgrims from all over the land come here.
Jeez, look how big these waves are. I didn't even think that until I saw these people. But this is a big river.
To worship Mother Ganga.
If anyone in India who watches this knows what this village is and what it looks like today, please reach out and send me a picture or go there. I'm so curious what this village looks like now. Like, does it still look like this? Does it have these stairs? I bet it does, but I bet things have changed. I bet there are electrical wires everywhere, or I bet this whole village has been abandoned. I'm so curious. What happened to this village?
Worship Mother Ganga.
Okay, we've been watching just clips of the Ganges River for a minute now, but I have no complaints because I've also been bopping out to this music, having a great time. So we're still doing good, all right?
The cool, refreshing waters of the Ganga are reputed to have prophylactic qualities.
The waters of the Ganga are reputed to have prophylactic qualities. You know what? Given the population of India, I would accept that. That there is literally something in their water making them make kids. That's funny. I wonder if that is at any way true or not. I wonder if that's just a spiritual thing, or if there's a weird chemical in there. I mean, I bet there's a bunch of weird chemicals in the Ganges now, but specifically even back then when this was recorded, I wonder, I don't know, that's such a funny statement to say.
Winding through the low foothills of Hardwar.
Dang, look at the Indian countryside though. Does India still look like this? See, my vision of India is there are so many people that you can't have nice countryside. I guess I'm exposing a lot of my opinions on India right now. I really want to go to India. I really like the people from India, but I have a certain idea of India that might not be complimentary to a lot of people.
The Ganga brings water to the paddy fields of the Garhwali farmer who lives along her banks.
See, I'm always so amazed by these terraces. That is something that blows my mind every time I see it. How did somebody make this terrace? Maybe I'll watch a video one day where I see somebody build a terrace, but it just seems so impossible to clear all the land and flatten it like this. Oh my gosh, I don't know. It just seems impressive.
Strong, sturdy, and simple, these people of the mountain work hard for their living.
Oh wow, and you get to see some real I don't want to say indigenous, but you get to see some real traditional Indian people in their traditional Indian clothes doing their traditional, Indian farming practices. This is great.
Rice, their staple food, is grown in abundance in the terraced fields on the bank.
See, again, I love this. I love the old agricultural techniques. This is how they used to farm whatever they're farming. I don't even know, rice. But just to have four guys lined up on an old stick just stepping on it. Again, This has all been lost. Maybe not in India, honestly, but in most of the globalized agricultural land, it has all been mechanized beyond belief. So you don't get just guys stepping on straw like you do, like you used to.
Banks of the river. The sure-footed mountain goat is the farmer's friend. It supplies milk, hair, and is a sturdy pack animal useful on the steep mountain slopes. Ganga is sacred to millions of our people who come from far and near to pay homage to her.
This is going to be a small little comment. There is a high-pitched squeal associated with the audio of this. I'm sorry to anyone who's getting annoyed by it. It's just starting to annoy me, but I think we're going to power through.
No path is too stony, no journey too difficult for the devout.
See, I love this. You're really seeing like some traditional Indian garb, you know? You're seeing the true culture through this. A lot of the things I've viewed for this channel so far, I've said the same comment that these people look so Americanized, but these people do not look Americanized. These people look traditional, culturally in their right place, you know, like everything they're doing. And it's so good because you get to experience what that actually looked like. What did people in India before, you know, t-shirts were made in factories over there? What did they wear? You know, and this is what they wore.
This is Lakshman Jhula, about 10 miles from Hardwar, one of the many sacred spots.
Wow, this is a real bridge right here. I didn't realize they were building bridges like this in India this early. Again, I'm sorry to any Indian people. I just did not think they were investing this much in their infrastructure this early. I guess they were still probably a colony at this point. No, 60. Oh, crap. I don't know when India got its independence. They were either at the tail end of the British Raj or they were just newly independent. So it's impressive to see like these infrastructure projects because I don't know if the British really invested heavily in Indian infrastructure. Maybe they did. I don't know. That's the thing. It's like this isn't like central India. This is like remote mountain India. And they have bridges like this even in the remote sections.
On the Ganga.
Dang, this is a huge bridge though. It is like really big.
Casting one last lingering look, the river now prepares to leave her mountain home. Ganga enters the plains at the holy city of Hardwar, dropping in height from over 10,000 to 1,000 feet. Many pilgrims from all over the country come here.
This is, again, just insane to see these, like, traditional Indian people. Because if you can go to the same place, I bet this place still exists, and it looks probably pretty identical, but the people will definitely look different. They will be wearing different clothes. So it's so interesting to see what they're wearing here.
To bathe in the sacred waters of the river and to prepare
Well, it looks like some things haven't changed.
for their pilgrimage to the holy Himalayas, to the mountain shrines of Badrinath and Kedarnath. From Hardwar to Allahabad extends the upper Ganga plain.
Allahabad? All right, so that's how he said it. So it's Hardwar to Allahabad. So we're looking at the map now, and it looks like the Ganges goes straight through Uttar Pradesh, which checks out because that is like one of the only like states or provinces or princely kingdoms or whatever of India that I actually know about. Like Uttar Pradesh, to me, is like the big one, you know, like the one where like everyone lives. So it makes sense that it's also right along the Ganges River. Is that true for Indian people? Is Uttar Pradesh like just the one that everyone from outside of India actually knows about? Because I couldn't tell you, I guess I could tell you about Kashmir, but jury's still out if that's Indian or not. But Uttar Pradesh is like the one that I actually like know of.
It includes nearly the whole of Uttar Pradesh. Two big rivers, the Yamuna and the Ram Ganga, join the Ganga. Kanpur and Fatehgarh are other important cities on the river. In the plains, the river runs placidly. But when the rains come, it becomes turbulent, flooding vast areas of the land.
Oh, wow, this is crazy footage. They caught a flood in India from the air. This is early days for this sort of like disaster footage. So this really is spectacular. In a bad way, obviously. It's bad that, you know, all these people probably lost their homes. Or maybe not. Maybe this is just their farms getting water for the year. I don't know. But it looks like a natural disaster.
When the flood waters withdraw, they leave behind a thick deposit of rich silt, which has built the plains through the ages. On this life-giving...
See, that's what I'm saying. They have mechanized farming equipment already. So that farming montage that we saw a second ago, I feel like those guys were already being replaced all the way back in 1960.
Alluvial soil depends the fertility of the...
Again, I don't want to just shit talk India this whole time, but I just was not really expecting for them to have such like modern farming equipment. Maybe that was like another aspect of like their colonial relationship that they brought this sort of stuff, but I thought India modernized a lot more recently, I guess, than I actually expected. I mean, the fact that I'm watching Indian film program should tell you that India was actually very advanced for the time. And part of that might have been because they had a close relationship with the British Empire or whatever. But no matter what it is, like I don't think you'll find programs like this for pretty much any other country besides the US, like England and India, like it's actually very impressive that there is an Indian film ministry or Ministry of Information that has all these, documents.
Making them one of the most extensively cultivated...
And I guess an extension of that is the farm equipment also. They had modern film cameras and modern farm equipment at the same time.
...regions of the world.
Again, I love the farming technique. Why, like, how do you flatten this land? You just get some cows and you have them drag a wooden board and you step on it. That's how you flatten land. See, I was saying how absolutely insane it is for people to have made terraces. And then it's like, oh, it's pretty simple. You just get a board and you stand on it and you ride behind some cows.
The Ganga has for centuries...
This, I bet, is still practiced in India to this day.
...has also provided precious water for these...
I don't know if there's any land left to clear in India, though. I think all the land has already been, flattened.
...plains. These are the headworks of the Upper Ganga Canal at Hardwar, built some 100 years ago.
Dang, they had a canal like this built 100 years prior to this. So they had this canal with all these, like, concrete blocks and everything made in the 1860s. Again, I think that's like maybe the most important lesson from this and like any other Indian films that I watch in the future is just like how actually like modernized and industrialized parts of this country at least were like well in advance to what we'd imagine.
From here, the waters of the river are carried to irrigate.
Again, maybe I'm just a dumb American who just didn't like expect Indians to have canals, like concrete canals. But I feel like if I thought that, then a lot of you watching are also probably in disbelief.
Irrigate the dry regions of the plains. Low down at Narora in Bulandshahr district, the river is tapped once again, both for irrigation and electricity. Electricity to light the villages, drive...
I also did not think that they had like a substantial need for electricity yet. I don't know, just seeing like these perfectly like new energy transformers, it's I don't know, I just didn't expect this to be in this program. I don't know. Again, no hard feelings to the Indian people. I just did not think that they would have freaking electricity everywhere in the country this early. I don't even know if America was fully electrified by this time. But like these shots look like America. Like these like power towers or whatever they are, like that's what they look like in America too.
Light the villages, drive the industries, and work the tube wells of the district, bringing new life to the land and crops. Wheat is the main crop of the Upper Ganga plain and is grown in large quantities. It is a rabi or a spring crop and ripens in March. Gram is also grown here. Other food crops...
Called these gram. I don't know what this is, but I bet the Indian viewers, if there are any Indian viewers still, I bet they recognize this. What are they though? They look like little berries.
Other food crops are jawar, bajra, and to some extent pulses.
I haven't heard of any of these. I bet this is all like the most basic food crops of India though.
Sugarcane is a cash crop of major importance. Life in the villages depends on the crops and their cultivation, which in turn depends on the cycle of the monsoon.
Dude, yeah, look at these people. Oh my gosh. So they're in their traditional clothes and they're using their traditional tools and their traditional farming techniques. That's like, sometimes it feels like techniques have been lost, but I feel like there are still people in India doing this same method today. Yeah, I feel like this could be colorized and people wouldn't know that this came from like 60 years ago. The music cues feel a little, a little iffy, a little stereotypical, but again, Indian people made this, Indian people recorded all this, so you can't say, oh, like they're just playing that sounds because it's India. Like, they made those choices themselves.
Tilling the land is an age-old occupation, but old implements and old methods...
Dude, I love that. The guy's shaking the dirt to get the fine particles to fall. I don't think they do that by hand anymore still.
But old implements and old methods give way to new.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that's what he just said. Old methods and old techniques give way to new. Yeah, this looks like a new apparatus right here. I've never seen this sort of thing on a farm, though. It looks like saw blades. Oh, okay, so they're sorting the grain and they're cutting it up and then they're blowing it. That is such an industrialized, like, assembly line almost. That's such an industrialized process that they have. Like, they have all this equipment. It's almost fully industrialized, I guess.
Symbols of change dot the landscape.
Cylinders of change. That's so funny because, again, like here in America, like these sorts of cylinders just are farms, like you see one of these and you just think of farm because that's just sort of how it's always been in America. But it's funny to think, India had thousands of years of farming history before people came up with huge metal grain silos. So yeah, it's funny that they were farming grain long before there were ever something like this. And the construction of silos like this was like a new thing happening in India at the time. It's just, again, it's funny. It's funny comparing Indian sensibilities to American sensibility.
This is a grain silo and elevator at Hardwar in Uttar Pradesh. It is equipped with the most modern mechanism for preserving food grains and can store 10,000 tons of grains.
Dang, they even have like industrialized like sewing machines to sew up these canvas bags. Like I really hope I'm not being offensive, but I really just did not expect them to have this degree of like, I don't know, mechanization. I feel like I didn't expect anyone to have that, let alone people in India, but like this is some really serious like gear that they're doing right here. I mean, I guess it makes sense, but I really just did not expect them to be this industrialized so early, which that's why you watch stuff like this, right? So that you learn.
The rich produce of the land provides raw materials for many industries. Kanpur on the upper Ganga is the largest center of industrial activity of North India.
I wonder if that's still true. Is that like, I wonder if this is like now, like an industrial hellscape, because it still looks kind of like half rural, half, industrialized. But I bet by now this is all just like, yeah, smokestacks. I bet this is like hell on earth, or hell in India at least, this part. If it already looks like that, then it's probably worse now.
It has a number of cotton and woolen mills.
I don't know what this like factory outskirts are, but the numbers aren't in English, but they're clearly like the numbers that were brought by the English colonizers. It's interesting that they didn't bother ever putting up like the numbers in Hindi just to help people. Like they were just forced to use the Western European number system. It shows the interaction between the colonizers and the colonized, right? Like these people did not use this number system before the British arrived. But now they had to learn it because of how their factory operated.
It has a number of cotton and woolen mills. Its cotton industry dates back nearly 100 years.
See, that's also bizarre though, because its cotton industry only got started like 100 years prior to this, which I guess means some of the clothes we're seeing them wear might not have actually been too traditional. Like if they didn't have cotton, then they must have made their clothes out of different materials, so they must have made different sorts of clothes than they were wearing now. I don't know if the clothes I'm seeing these people wear is now cotton, whereas before it wasn't, or if they're still just wearing their traditional garb, but I guess I never really thought about the Indians farming cotton.
But Kanpur is perhaps best known for its leather works.
Oh, geez. I do know something about the leather works, though. If we're learning about the Ganges River and we're talking about leather, I have a bad feeling about this.
These leather goods have gained wide fame and are in demand in several countries.
Hang on, so is that leather cow leather, or is that like goat leather or something? I just find it hard to believe that they were using cow skins for leather. Maybe they were, but I don't know.
There are sugar factories too. The Ganga plain not only makes our country self-sufficient in sugar, but also provides a surplus for export. At Allahabad, the Ganga is joined by the Yamuna. This holy confluence is called the Triveni Sangam, the meeting of three...
Oh man, I wish I could like zoom in on these flags, because there look to be some pretty interesting designs. If anyone's a vexillology fan in here, I bet these would have some really interesting stories behind them.
Ganga, Yamuna, and the mythical Saraswati. Guarding the confluence stands the massive fortress. Triveni Sangam.
Dang, yeah, this is kind of what I expected the Ganges to look like, just absolutely full of boats. That's more in line with my expectations.
Holy of holies.
I guess they didn't even mention about those guys tanning the leather, but that is like a major source of pollution in the Ganges River now.
Pilgrims from all over the country come here to pay their homage to Mother Ganga.
Okay, so this is cool. You're getting to see the actual traditional, like not even just their clothing, but their like almost their ritual wear, right? Because they go to the Ganges River for all their sorts of rituals or, rites and passages and whatnot. So this is interesting. You actually get to see what they look like when they were celebrating their religion way before it was like not eradicated, but way before it was altered so much by colonialization. Maybe it already has been, but I don't know. I think this feels more authentically Indian than if I were to go there now and see it, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Every 12 years at the time of the...
Dang, the elephants. I didn't really realize they did that. Like, I knew they, like, trained and domesticated elephants, but I didn't realize they just, like, had them out like this all the time. Like, they're just, like, horse carriages or whatever. I'm so curious about the people in these elephant carriages. Like, are these Indian people? And if so, are they, like, the really rich Indian like princes or something, or are these like British, like colonial officers in these? I don't know. I'm so curious. They look like they're wearing more European garb, like this umbrella, for example, right? Like, I don't think I'm going to speak for Indians for a second, but I don't think a single Indian would really ever think of putting an umbrella above them to keep off the sun. Like, I don't know. That seems like such a like sensitive European sort of thing to do. So this is giving Europeans are riding the elephants, but I can't imagine why that would be the case. They might just be like the rich Indian people. I don't know though. Who rides the elephants in India? Is riding an elephant like a poor person thing in India, or is it like a super rich person thing? Because it feels like it's super rich person thing, but also like you only get elephants from like the jungle, so you have to live in the jungle to be able to train elephants. I don't know. What's the socioeconomic standing of elephants in India? They have to be symbols of wealth, actually.
Every 12 years at the time of the Kumbh Mela, millions of people gather here. The Kumbh Mela...
Yeah, see, these guys don't have an umbrella. This guy has a guy waving a fan on him, but he doesn't have an umbrella, which just makes me feel a little bit better for the assumption I made a second ago.
Is one of the most sacred of India's ancient festivals.
But that actually is so funny that Indian people do recognize that it's hot as all heck here, but they didn't have umbrellas. They just had people fanning them. Like that, I don't know, that's a difference, right?
The devout come to bathe here in the waters of the holy river.
Dang, it's crazy that like, this is what, like 80 years ago, and it still looks absolutely packed. Like I wonder what India's population was like. Like it must have been like half of what it is now. Like it was probably like 700 million or something like that. I don't know. It's crazy to think that this place has been packed for like 100 or 200 years, probably more, like probably hundreds of years. India has had just so many people that you can barely even like get into the river. like all at once, you know? You know what I'm saying? Like maybe a parade, but like not just every day on the Ganges River, you know?
The Middle Ganga plain includes parts of Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. Here the river is joined by the Gomti, the Ghagra, the Gandak and the Kosi from the north and the Son from the south. The important cities are Mirzapur, Varanasi, Ghazipur.
Yeah, looking at this now, I didn't realize just how many rivers India had. Like, obviously, you know, there are rivers everywhere. I know that. I understand that. But I'm starting to realize that the Ganges runs right under the Himalayas. So all the meltwater from the Himalayas has to go either south or north. And they're going to get so much water in each of these from the Himalayas that there's probably so much water in the Ganges. That's, you know, it obviously makes sense. It's like the lifeblood of India at this point. But I'm realizing how important the Ganges is, not only to like Indian society, but just geographically, it is like where a lot of the Himalayan meltwater goes.
Balia, Patna, Munger, and Bhagalpur.
Shout out to all these villages too. If anyone watching is from any of these villages, please leave a comment.
This is Varanasi, or Kashi, holy city, beloved of Shiva, ageless and eternal.
I feel like I've heard of this city before too. I don't know if that's just because I played Civilization as India a lot, but I feel like I recognize this name.
Famous through the centuries as a center of Sanskrit learning.
I feel like saying I wish India still looked like this, and that's me saying that without knowing if India looks like this or not. I feel like it doesn't look like this anymore. I feel like it's even more crowded, and I feel like these nice temples and buildings have all been not destroyed, but have been covered up by like modern urbanization, I guess I should say. But I feel like you don't get as good of a view of these amazing structures as you used to. That's what I'll say. Like these buildings are probably still around, but you probably just don't get to see them like this. This place looks really cool. This looks like an amazing like architectural feat, pretty much.
Innumerable ghats rise above the waters of the river.
There are so many places like this in India that have like these huge like stone steps that lead to the river. And I know that's like a spiritual thing in India, but it's very impressive. I mean, we have like river walks here in America, but there isn't like this huge infrastructure for accessing the river by foot like there is in India. I don't know.
Presenting a picturesque panorama. Hundreds of temples crowd the riverfront. Varanasi, the city of the weaver Saint Kabir, is known the world over for its beautiful silks and its gorgeous brocades, woven in all the hues of the rainbow by traditional weavers, whose skill is handed...
Yeah, this is another program that I think would benefit from having been in color, just to see the designs of these. Because obviously, you know, Indian clothing is always very colorful, and I would actually really enjoy seeing that, but I guess not. Hey, I'm wearing the same thing as this kid in the factory, though.
From father to son.
Dang, look how fast these kids are going. Holy crap, they have been doing this for a very long time. I'm going to try to count their fingers, actually. It looks like they're all good. It's just, he's going so fast.
Equally well known is the ornamental brassware of Varanasi, which finds a ready market at home and abroad.
Yeah, this stuff looks awesome. I hope they still have factories like this in India. Like, I would buy a traditional Varanasi urn.
Leaving Varanasi, the Ganga comes to Patna, capital of Bihar, a city whose history dates back to the days of Buddha.
Patna, this is Patna. Can anyone from Patna go to this street? Does this street still look like this?
An ancient city.
Whoa, I'd never seen this too. All right, this must still be around in Patna. There's always such interesting stuff in this that I never expect. That's why I love watching this. Like, I didn't even know about this big dome thing.
Patna has a number of historic monuments.
Hang on, do people in India know about this? Like, if I showed this to any Indian person, like, would they be able to recognize it? Like, is this a national landmark, like this weird dome staircase thing? Or is this just like a funny side road attraction that like even people in India don't really know about?
The oldest are the remains of the city of Pataliputra, the capital of Ashoka, in the 3rd century BC.
Dang, these are pretty cool too. These are ruins of an ancient Indian city. That's just like so wild because obviously I know how old civilization is in India. I know people from India will say that it's always been India, but in another way, India has been so many different civilizations at the same time. Like it's been, one thing after the other, and things stay the same, but things change too. And it's weird to think that they are excavating their own history. As an American, especially, I feel like archaeology really deals with like other civilizations, other cultures. So it must be weird for Indian people to be practicing archaeology for their own civilization. It must be very interesting, and it must be more rewarding, right? Like you can learn something new about your own like country, your own people by doing this. That's so cool. I'm curious if Indian people were doing archaeology before the colonial period, because that also seems like something that European people would be fascinated by, is that learning about all these ancient civilizations that were in India.
As she flows on, the Ganga becomes wider. Also, it is deep enough to allow ferry steamers to ply on its surface. The Ganga is an important artery of trade. Till recently, boats were the only means of crossing the river in Bihar. Now at Mokame, 70 miles from Patna, a new railway bridge spans the river.
Dang, look at this old train. Wow, this is like a great old steam engine. This is about to take you to Hogwarts right here. Whatever the Indian equivalent of Hogwarts is, that's what this train's about to take you to.
2.5 miles long, it links the rich mineral tracts of South Bihar with the fertile agricultural lands of North Bihar. On entering West Bengal, the Ganga divides itself into many streams. One of these is the Hooghly, on which stands Calcutta. This lower Ganga...
That's so funny that it's still Calcutta, because Calcutta has since changed to the spelling of its name, at least to Kolkata or whatever. But it's funny to see these old sorts of names. I wonder, that's such a weird name for India. Hooghly? Like, I'm sorry, that does not sound Indian to me. If I'm wrong, if I'm insulting some, very small Indian tribe or whatever, I'm sorry, but Hooghly sounds like an English name for a river. Maybe it's not, but Hooghly does not sound Indian.
Plain roughly coincides with the delta region. In the middle and the lower Ganga plain, rice grows in abundance. Because of the heavy rainfall and the early monsoon...
Oh, it's so funny. This was all India back in the day. That's I just said Bangladesh a second ago, but Bangladesh didn't even exist. This was all just British Raj.
Soon, the farmer can grow 3 seasonal crops instead of the traditional 2.
When did India get its independence, though? That's what I'm trying to figure out, because didn't they get their independence and weren't they immediately split into Pakistan and Bangladesh? I don't know the history well enough to really be talking on it.
The rich soil of the delta is ideal for jute cultivation. Quick growing, jute is sown in May, July, and harvested in August, September.
I think I've heard of jute, but I don't know what it tastes like. Is that something that is still very prevalent in India, jute? I bet it is. I bet it's like the most normal thing ever there. But you imagine that people grow like wheat everywhere. I mean, they were growing wheat, but like the fact that there are specific vegetables that really only people in India grow. And, the same is true for everywhere else around the world, too. It's funny. I enjoy learning about these very specific details of Indian life. That's part of the reason why watching these are so enjoyable.
In these regions, fishing is a major occupation.
Whoa, this looks awesome, too. This huge fishing net. I'm impressed.
And fish, an important part of the daily diet.
These guys all look ripped, too. I bet they're living good. Getting fish every day, just working out. I bet this is also, just the life. I mean, maybe the water they're in isn't so clean, but probably it is still pretty clean by this point. I don't know how clean the water is of the Ganges in any of these, but this seems like a nice life, just fishing in the Ganges. I feel like I'm going to get comments by Indian people now, yeah, you cannot eat the fish in the Ganges now. The Hudson River is the same way. So, I like to think that I am also familiarized with water pollution or river pollution because of where I grew up, but I have a feeling you should not be eating the fish caught from this river today.
Along the numerous water channels
I'm curious if the same was true even back then or if people just like didn't care.
of the delta ply a wide variety of river boats. They carry the produce of the land from faraway places to the market at the river's bend. In the lower regions of the delta, these channels are tidal. The salty seawater rushes into them as far inland as 100 miles. The fields must therefore be protected by dikes. Along these channels grow a thick tangle of unusual trees, the mangrove trees, their breathing roots submerged at high tide and exposed at ebb. These
See, this is very cool because I feel like a lot of these mangroves are now either removed or incredibly threatened. The sundarbars, is that what it's called? The sundarbars? Please, if you're watching and that makes sense, let me know. But I think this whole region is like one of the richest wetland ecosystems on the planet. I think this is actually the biggest, the Ganges Delta is the biggest river delta on Earth. I think the environment that has arisen within this delta is one of the richest in the world. And it's today, a lot of it has been changed into farmland, but it's really cool to see it through this old film where at least some of it has been preserved. This film is not only a preservation of the time, but also of like the state of the world at that time, right? Like you get to see this forest where there might not be a forest there today. And I just find that so fascinating and so valuable, I think, to be able to see, to be able to point back and say, no, this used to look like this. You know, we have a resource that we can now refer to and say how the environment has changed since then. Again, it's just very valuable, very cool to have, very cool to see.
These are the teeming tidal jungles of the Sundarbans. Sometimes the incoming tide rushes up the mouth of the river. Hemmed by the narrow banks, the swell rises often to heights of 20 feet or more, causing severe damage. These are
Jesus, are these the tides? This is like a freaking tsunami happening right here. Is this happening every day?
known as tidal bores. Nearing the journey's end.
Oh, I like this too. This aerial shot is really kind of what I was curious about. You can see that like industrialization has already taken over. Like their cities are already on these like straight right angle pathways, which, they may have had those in their cities prior to this, but like these huge lots that are dedicated to like one factory or one warehouse, like that's a sign of modernization taking place or industrialization taking place at least. And it's so interesting to see.
Reaches Calcutta, the largest
Okay, so this is Calcutta.
city in India, a giant port and center of shipping, a meeting place of trade and commerce.
See, but that's what's so weird is like I expected to see, I don't want to say slums, I expected to see houses, some sort of like people surrounding this city. But you can see there's all these warehouses and then it just looks like empty fields. Like I imagine in the time since this was made, people have since flocked here and built houses and slums or whatever. But it's interesting to see that back then, these hadn't been here long enough for the areas surrounding these industrial hubs to be urbanized. There's an urban environment right next to like pretty much nothing. And now I bet this is just filled with people's living spaces because people want to live near where they work. So it's strange to see that there aren't tons of people living right here at this moment, but I bet it's changed since then. I don't know, what does an aerial of Calcutta look like today? Maybe one of the people watching from India can answer that. Does Calcutta still look like this, where it has warehouses and then this like empty, this might be like a palace or something, but this empty like plain right next to factories? I don't think so. I bet this is all packed with people now.
On the waters of the river swarm a vast variety of river crafts, from the large ocean-going liners to the humble dinghy. River boats of every shape, size, and speed. And towering over them all is the majestic steel structure of the Howrah Bridge, which spans the Hooghly.
Dude, this must have been such a time to be alive in India, right? To be witnessing the like modernization. Like it must have blown people's minds to see a bridge like this back in the day. Even now, this is like an insane bridge to see. It just must have been so amazing back in the day to see this. Like, yeah, oh man, this looks like a freaking wonder, this bridge. Like it's so big. It must have felt like the world was changing so fast at this moment in time.
One of the biggest of its kind, the Howrah Bridge is a marvel of modern engineering.
It really is. This looks exactly like the old Tappan Zee River.
Along the banks of the Hooghly are many jute mills. One of the major industries of Calcutta, jute is India's most vital export.
Jute is India's most vital export? I wonder if that's still true. I wonder if that was ever true, but I wonder especially if that's still true. What even is jute? I don't know.
Calcutta has other industries too, like iron and steel and engineering, shipbuilding and many more.
Wow, see, again, I just did not expect them to be assembling, I guess from scratch, these huge ocean vessels. I thought that was, again, like something that Europe really had like a head start in. But, you know, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But I just did not expect them to be making such industrialized products, I guess. That's, again, it's very impressive. I've definitely changed my views of 60s India from watching this.
A slow-moving muddy river, the Ganga carries a lot of silt in her waters, 9 lakh tons every day. All this silt is deposited in the river bed. This must be constantly cleared by dredging to permit big ships to sail up the river. If this was not done, Calcutta would cease to be a port. And
that's wild. I wonder if that's also still true or not. Do they just have to constantly dredge dirt out of the Ganges Delta in order to allow access to Calcutta? I wonder if they're still doing that, because that, like, I don't know, that's just so bizarre. That's so much energy. That's so much work to go into maintaining this port. I wonder why. You know, the port probably is accessible to shallow boats, but I bet you can't access it from like big boats. And I bet that's why, because they want to export that, all that stuff. I wonder if they're still doing that. Are they still dredging the Ganges Delta to allow for sea access? I wonder. Somebody please, Indian audience, enlighten me.
Busy port it is, catering to the needs of a vast hinterland, constantly loading and unloading a large...
That's just, I don't know, I don't want to say this, but it's funny to hear him say the word hinterland, because that's such an old term, not only an old term, but that's an old, like, English term, as opposed to, like, American. I feel like hinterland is a word that you would only learn by having conversations with British people. It's just, even the language, even the very words he's using is representative of his English education. Maybe I'm wrong, though. Maybe Americans use the word hinterland, too, but I don't know.
Of goods.
Wonder what flag that is. That's like an inverse Japanese flag right there. Oh, is that the Bangladeshi flag? Maybe not, though. I don't know. Maybe, I'm curious what color that flag is. Is that a dark green flag with a red circle in it, or is that just another sort of flag? I don't know. Let me know. Is Calcutta in Bangladesh or India? It's probably still in India.
There are many items of import. Machinery for our factories and workshops, food for our people. We export a number of things too. Jute and hemp from the fields of West Bengal and Bihar.
That's funny how that was the two big exports of India at this time, jute and hemp. I wonder if the jute was for eating, or if it was similar to hemp, where it was just a plant material that was used to manufacture other things. I wonder. They're not explaining, so.
Tea from the hills of Assam and...
Tea, that makes sense. It makes sense that they would make tea. That's probably going straight to England.
Manganese from the mines of Bihar, and a host of other things, big and small.
That's also something that you really forget about, is how much colonialism really happened on account of mining.
All these make their way through Calcutta to the 7 seas. This city of steel and smoke, where the Ganga approaches the sea, is in complete contrast to the wilderness of snow and ice where the Ganga was born. Further down the delta is a region of snaky streams, shifting sands, and silent isles as the Ganga divides and joins and divides again into a crisscross network of waterways.
Yeah, this is what I was talking about earlier with the mangrove forests in the Sundarbans. I think that's what it's called. Anyway, these tidal mangrove forests are some of the richest in the world, and it's so cool to see them from these aerial views as well, because the landscape is so chaotic thanks to the rivers and all the erosion and deposition that's taking place in this delta. So I'm really glad we're getting to see this. Again, most of this is probably gone. There is still some that's left, but a lot of this is probably just freaking Dhaka slums at this point. Yeah, exactly. Look at this island, right? This island is cleared.
Journey's End, a journey of some 1,500 miles. Encircling the Ganga Sagar Island, her last piece of land, Ganga, the mightiest of our rivers, goes out to meet the sea.
All right, that was it. That was produced by Films Division, Government of India, The End. That's so funny. They even have the copyright symbol. That's really funny, I think. But that was the River Ganga. I enjoyed that. I think I learned a lot more about Indian society and Indian technological progress from this than I learned about the actual River Ganga. Again, the Ganges River is like the most important river in India, so it's kind of impossible to learn about the Ganges River without learning about India, and vice versa. It's impossible to learn about India without learning about the Ganges. But I feel like this could have done a little bit better of a job illustrating just, I don't know, how the River Ganges affected everything. I don't know. I just don't. I feel like I ended up learning more about like factories and trains and stuff than I did about the River Ganges. But this was very interesting. I feel very much informed on 1960s India after watching this, and I'm definitely glad I did. I guess this just didn't do a good enough job of illustrating just how many people relied on this river. That's really what I wanted to see. Not just how people used it, but how people need this river and how many people need this river. There are so many people who need the Ganges River in order to survive and to, live out their lives. But they never mentioned the leather tanners. I guess that's just a little secret of ours. I think that's all that's left. So thanks for watching, and we'll cut to black.